everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we will try and understand everything about the console application. In our previous videos, we have created Hello World example with Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio using the console application. But we have not discussed the phases or the different parts of the console application. So I would like to discuss more about that perspective. So let's try and understand what the console application is, how do you create it, what are the different parts of the console application to begin with it. So console application with .NET or C# is an application which gives us a command line user interface which you can use to write your logic and to test your logic. So whatever logic you write, you do not get a Windows-based user interface or web-based user interface. You get the CLI or command line interface to execute your code. These kind of applications are more suitable if you are a beginner who wants to learn the language as such from the concept point of view. It's very easy to start. You can anytime create a console based application, start writing the code, and then straight away you can execute the code using the entry point of the console application. It will not require any rocket science to understand the execution or to start creating the console application as such. Even if you are experienced programmer and if you want to do some kind of a POC or you want to invest some time on learning some new concept on C# or on your programming, then usually most of the programmer prefer to create those concepts or write those concepts with the help of console application, because that's most easy and suitable option for a programmer to get a start and straight away focus on their conceptual work. Now to start with it, I'll use this Visual Studio solution which we have created in our previous demonstration, and I'll give you a walkthrough of how to create a console application. You can also create a console application and altogether new solution in Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio as such. As I already have a Visual Studio solution file created, so I can create a new project onto existing solution by right clicking, add new, and then go to the new project. Here I'm getting the same window which we have seen in the previous example, where I'm getting the recent project template which I've used recently. As you can see, for the console application specifically with the C#, we have two different type of project template. One with a console application with a .NET framework. Another one is a console application with a .NET Core. .NET Core is something which we have created in our previous example. In this example, I'll give you a walkthrough to create a console application with a .NET framework type. I'll click on next. We'll provide the name to our console app. You can provide any name to your application, then you can choose the location or the directory location in which your project code should be saved. As we have selected the framework option, so you have to specify the .NET framework which you want to use for your console application. By default, it is the 4.7 is something which is being selected, but you can go for the next level which is 4.8 as well. It may possible on your Visual Studio it is showing some new version. It depends when you are trying to create a new console application on your Visual Studio. I'll leave the default setting as is and click here on the create option. That will create a new console application project with the .NET framework right here in this solution file. So here in the console application, there are several parts of it. Like we have the reference section which shows the different library or the DLLs which are referred as in package to this particular application. DLL refers to the dynamic link library, which is an output of another C# project or an external C# project, which we can take as a reference. We'll talk about the DLLs and the class library projects later in our separate demo. So anything extra or additional references which we have and we want to use in our project, we can add those references by right clicking here on the reference section and click on the add reference or add service reference. So there are some built-in references automatically added by Microsoft, like you have the system DLL, which is a base DLL for any .NET project. Then you have a system.core, which is a subset or the child of the system DLL itself. Then you have the data and then system.data and so on. Everything is basically, if you look at the part of the base system library, and these are some extensions to the system library. Now we'll talk about these namespace in a while, or these naming conventions in a while. Now first, look at the next file we have in the console application is about the configuration file. This comes by default with the .NET framework project, but if you are creating a config or the .NET core project, then you can add the configuration file as in JSON file to the .NET core application. So there is a special extension of the file which is added to the project, which is of .config extension. This contains the information about any of the configuration related to this particular project. For example, at the startup, it is configured to use the .NET framework as this. You can also add other configuration sections to this particular block, such as if you would like to refer any runtime configuration value which you want to define, such as the database connection string or retry count or any of the variable which you may want to refer it during the run time of the program, then you can define those configuration here. We'll have a separate demonstration of the configuration later sometime. Next, you have a entry point or the startup class here. The class name is program.cs. If I double click on this particular class, it has got some predefined line of code when you create this particular class. Now if you look at the different section of the code, first of all we got the using sections, which has I think 5 different usings as of now. It's been used here in this application. So these usings are nothing, it is the part of the references which are being added to the project already. Like we have seen, the system is one of the using, then you have system.collection.generic, system.text linked, and so on. After that, next section we have it on line number 7 is the namespace, and the namespace currently by default is given based on the project name, as our name of the project is console app, hence the namespace is created as in console app. Namespace is, think like a namespace as in the label which is been decorated onto the envelope. Let's consider class as an envelope, then this label is applied on that particular class to identify the class with its unique name, right? Again, this name is customizable. For each class you can create its own namespace, or single namespace can be provided to multiple classes to logically group together all these different namespaces. I'll show you one example. After that, on the line number 9, we have the class declaration. So the typical class declaration comes with the 3 parts. You have the internal, which is the access modifier. So by default, modifier is given as internal, but you could have the other modifiers such as private and public. Next, you have the keyword class, which is a reserved word which you use to define any of the class in the .NET application. Then you have the name of your class. By default, the name is given with the same name what you have it with your class physical name. You can again change these values, which is given in the green color, which is the name of the class. I can say program.cs or any other class name as well. After that, you have an entry point method to this class in the console application, because whenever a console application runs, it requires to have a startup method which it can run your code. So we have this static void main as in the entry point method. Again, it has got a couple of parts. So part one is the access modifier for this application. It's right now the static is the access modifier for this class main. Then you have the return type of the main method. Void is the return type of this method, which means that this method is not going to return anything, it returns void. Then you have the name of the method. In the console application, main method is again kind of a reserved name to start with it, to start the application as such. And then within the name or the main method, you have a method argument, and the argument right now is taking the string, which is the array of a string. This is square bracket means it is taking the array of a string. The string here represents the data type of your method, so which is a combination of different sentences or word which it can accept as an input. Now the name of this argument is given as an arg. It could be anything, whatever is the choice of name you want to define to your method, you can provide the name of that name to your argument. By default, it is decorated as an argument. This is the default method what we have with the console app. Now inside this method, whatever line of code we want to write, we can write the code. So with the console app, or if we extend our discussion towards the namespace and try to understand how namespace can logically group together different classes, I'll give you an example of the system namespace itself. I'll click here on the reference and double click here on the system itself. And if we go on to the system itself, we'll find that system is the main namespace. It does not have any subsequent classes. But similarly, if I click here on the system.data namespace, and if I try and expand that, or system.data component namespace, then you will find that it has got the number of namespaces. For example, it has got the namespace as in Microsoft.code analysis, which is a namespace, and then inside the namespace we should have a classes. For example, when I expand the system.data, then it has got number of classes and the attribute within that particular namespace, which has been decorated here. So this is a database class which has got number of methods. Then you have got the different delegates which has been provided here. You can find the definition of the delegate like right here. Similarly, the definition of the method or the signature of the method, you can get the hint right here. So similarly, I can define multiple classes. It could be a physical class or any other class. I can define it right here by right clicking on my project, add new item, or I can click it add new class. By default, the class will be added with the same namespace. I can provide the name of the class the way I want to. In this example, I'll keep it as is. You can see that the class is added to the same namespace, which is the namespace or the name of the project. Now we have got two names or the two classes, so I can refer to the names, the program class, or within the program class I can refer to the class 1 using the namespace, as both of them are having it under the same namespace. So I do not explicitly require to mention the namespace because both of them are having the same parent or same namespace. So if I refer class 1, you can see that I'm getting I can easily access that particular class. Both of them are under the same level, and both of them are having the same access modifier, so I can easily access that. But consider that if this is not going to be into a same namespace. If I have my namespace, let's say my custom namespace for this class, then if I try to access the class 1, then I'm not going to get the class as such. You can see that I'm straight away my C# compile is trying to throw an error, and I'm also getting a hint here with this name. The hint is basically, it says that you need to use the namespace for that, and it is giving a name that use the namespace, my namespace. If I click here, then it will give a namespace. It will add the namespace with the using keyword, as it has added the other namespaces which are related to system. Now you can see that it has changed the color from the plain white text to the green color. Now I can simply create the instance of the name is my class, and I would not get any error. So this is how the importance of the namespace which we can use in your project. Next, we'll take a look at some of the methods which we have with the console application. So with the console application, we have a console class which is defined under the system library itself, system DLL itself. You can see that as soon as I type the console, I get an IntelliSense, which is a feature of Visual Studio, and this IntelliSense says that the console, which is the information of the console, is a class which is under the system.console, and it also gives the description of that class, which says that represents the standard input output and the error stream for the console application. This class cannot be inherited. To browse the .NET Framework source for the type, read the reference. That's the information we have got. Now if I use the console keyword at search, right, this is a class. Now it has got certain number of methods to it. Now to identify a method, you can remember this icon, or you can say a package icon or the container icon, whatever you want to use it. So this container icon is basically referring to all the methods we have inside this console class, right? So, and then after that you have these settings, or the settings panel icon, which is basically referring the settings of or the properties available with the console window. There would be attributes which are going to have the different access modifiers such as get and set. What those are, we will take a look at that later in our demonstration when we talk about the properties. But for now, think about that these are some get or set properties which you can change if you want to do some updates to your console window as such. Then after that you have the different events associated with that. So if you would like to filter out this list, you can see that it has a long list of set methods, properties and all. If you want to set a filter on this hint, then you can click on these icons and that will filter out all the properties for an example. Or if you double click on it, it will remove the filter. If I again filter out on the method, that will give me the list of all the methods which are available here with the console type. Now if I double click, if I press tab on this write line method, you can see that write line writes this console.writeLine method. It has number of input argument, 18 possible overloaded argument which we can use with this method. We'll talk about that overload concept later in our videos. So for now, things to understand or thing to remember here is write line basically writes the line, terminate the cursor, terminate the standard output stream. So what it does basically is it will help you write your content onto a console window using this method. So if you would like to refer or you want to write anything onto your console window, then you can use this method. Let's say I would like to write as in hello world, then I can simply use this string text as in hello world inside my console window. Now if you look at here, we are getting an error message here. It says that expected colon here. So in C#, whenever you write a statement in your code, and if you would like to complete that statement, there is a colon expected after end of your statement, otherwise it will throw the same error. So that's one of the things to remember. Now before I run the program, let's pay attention to the number of projects we have in this solution and the project we want to run. So you can see that we have 4 different projects which are added to this solution file, and one of them, which is the first one, is highlighted as in bold text, which indicates that this is as an startup project. Now if you would like to change this project from a startup project to any other project, let's say console application is something I want to make it a startup, so that when I run it, then this is the project I would like to run it. Then what you can do is you can right click on this project itself and choose this menu option and set as a startup project. That's option number 1. You can also click here on this option and change your startup project from the current one to any other one. Let me change this option, and you can see that as soon as I change this option, it has changed the startup project to console app. Now to run this console app, as we can use this start button, or you can also click here on this particular button, which means that run this project without any debug option. And then you have here, you have the debug and release option, and then here you have the configuration option. Now what these debug, release and configurations are. So debug is basically referring to debug option, wherein if you would like to investigate or debug each and every step or multiple step in between your program, then you can put a breakpoint as a developer to anywhere in the program, and then you can debug the program. I'll show you a demonstration of debug later in the video. Next you have the any CPU or the configuration mod, which defines the type of output for your project, which will be suitable for this Windows framework or the .NET core depending upon the application type. What does it mean? That any CPU will generate the type of output which will be suitable for this machine CPU. For example, if I'm running x64 4-bit processor, then the output is going to be suitable. The generated output will meet the requirement which is of related to x64. If I'm running an old Windows framework or the Windows operating system, then any CPU will generate an output of x32. Now if you have a requirement to override the any CPU to, let's say, specific configuration such as the x32-bit output you want to generate, then what you can do is you can create your own configuration, and you can say that I would like to generate an output which is of type x32 or x64 or anything like that, right? Now click here, or alternate to run your program is press F5. So I'll press F5 and that will basically run the program. So application has run successfully, but it has not waited. It has finished as soon as the build is completed. The reason for that is as soon as the main method has been executed, it has written this, and then it has straight away exits from the console. To wait the console, what we can do is we can use the read key method. So read key is basically it will wait for users input to provide on the console window. So let me run that again. You can see that this time we have got an output as in hello world, and then cursor is waiting for users input here. So if I press any key, then my application will terminate. Now while it is running, if you remember, if you take a look at closely to our Visual Studio panel, now our run button, debug button, or any other button which was enabled earlier, it is disabled now, because currently we are running our console application, so we cannot obviously trigger the run again. So now what options we have is we have the break all option, we have a stop option, and we have a restart option. So any of these options in between your program is running, if you want to utilize any of these options, then you can click on these buttons and that will help you to perform the appropriate action depending upon the action you choose. Right? Let me press the enter button or any button here or any key here basically, and then it will terminate the application as we have expected. So that's about the console application. There are, like I mentioned, within the console class itself, there are many properties, methods are available which we can make use of it. So I would request you to play around it, go through the console options and take a look at what are options available and just play around it. Simply create a program. For an assignment, what you can do is you can create a console application and take the input as in your name or anyone's name, and then you can print good morning with the name. For example, if I press type in Rakesh Suryavanshi, then it should display a name as in Rakesh.Suryavanshi. So that's your assignment with this exercise. I hope you will try at your own and then you'll find it easy to use it. We'll take a look at some of the more advanced feature of the console later in our video. Till then, do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching it. See you in the next video.